Welcome back. Okay, so in our last video, we identified the elements of a contract. So we talked about offer, we talked about consideration, we talked about acceptance. Those are the elements of our contract, and we lay out all of the elements in a contract so that there is clarity between the parties, so that the parties understand their mutual obligations and there is no confusion. Clarity is the number one reason why we need contracts. Our courts are currently flooded with tons of contract issues, breach of contract issues, all based on a misunderstanding of the agreement between the two parties. So we want to make sure that we have contracts and we have established what each party's obligations are so that there is no cause for confusion, so that there is no reason to enter into litigation. When we're talking about our contracts, they need to really establish who are the parties, when are they getting into this agreement, why are they getting into this agreement, contingent dates, insurance. All of these things are extremely important when entering into a contract. The second reason why we enter into contracts, why contracts are essential, is to determine liability. When we're thinking about liability, pre-COVID, post-COVID, we're thinking about several issues. So health is an essential element in a contract. If you are asking people to come into a venue, you need to have health considerations, whether or not food is being served, who is licensed to provide that food, whether or not the food is safe to serve to people, whether or not the vendor has insurance. That's another issue when you're thinking about inviting people into a space. Another consideration, safety. What are the capacity concerns within that venue? These are all things that have to be considered, and ultimately the parties that are contracting have to establish who is going to be liable if something goes wrong. That must be laid out in a contract, because as much as you don't want to consider it, if in fact something does go wrong, you have to be prepared for it. Because as the old saying goes, sometimes anything that can go wrong will. So you want to be prepared for it, no surprises. Make sure that all of those elements are included in your contract. In our next video, we'll walk through a sample vendor agreement and identify specific clauses that must be in a vendor agreement when you are contracting with vendors. It will identify an indemnification clause, which we'll talk about. The concept of indemnification essentially states that I am not going to be responsible if something goes wrong, and if at some point someone holds me responsible, you, the other party, will reimburse me, because that's what's in our contract. Another clause that will be in a contract is a cancellation clause. If in fact the party has to cancel, what do they need to do? What are they still entitled to? And how that's going to play out. Recently, a very hot clause, a very important clause, very frequent discussed clause is the force majeure clause, and whether or not COVID is considered as a force majeure incident. Is it an act of God? Is it a special circumstance? We'll take a look at that clause. Stay tuned for the next video.